Hello and welcome to the Dare to Differentiate podcast. This is Hani, your host, and today I have a very exciting special guest, Gitti Leider, Rebbetzin. We can start with that. World traveler.
The most Rebbetzin of them all.
Rebbetzin of the most.
Yeah.
One way to introduce you.
Yeah. I don't know if that's an accurate description, but I'll take it.
Okay, please take it. And what do you like to... You want to start with sharing something about yourself?
I don't think so. I think you really
Encompassed.
covered everything. Yeah, no, I think that's good.
Okay, great. So welcome. So happy to have you here. One of the many reasons why I wanted you to come on today was because we were having a conversation on Shabbos a couple of days ago about sharing the real story about growing up on Shlichus as our parents being Chabad, Rabbi and Rebbetzin, wherever for you was in San Diego. And so I wanted you to share a little bit of your experience, your story. I also feel like you have a very positive, fun, just go with the flow. This is part of the introduction. I feel like you have a super just go with the flow vibe. And I think a lot of times in this life, we get stuck in all kinds of things. And you're just wait, what? That's something I'm supposed to get stuck in? I didn't realize that. I had no idea.
Yeah, I was actually just having a conversation with somebody about that the other day. But the story of my life, it's funny because I don't think that my childhood was that crazy or was that different. When at the time I didn't think it was that weird. Now I don't think it was that weird. It's just when I talk to other people about my childhood, they're like, what? None of that is normal. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm, one of 11 kids. That seemed normal to me. I'm the ninth of 11. My parents are on Shlichus in San Diego. It's a little bit of a random location. I went to a co-ed day school till 8th grade in San Diego. And then they didn't have a high school. So I went to high school in Long Beach, California for 4 years to an all-girls school. But it was also kind of a day school high school more than a Beis Rivka strict high school. And then I went to Israel, to Tel Aviv seminary for a year, which was its own story in itself. And then I moved to Crown Heights right after that. And I've lived here ever since. So it's over 13 years, besides for the stint where I moved out and now I'm a nomad. But it never seemed so crazy. The fact that my dad's a rabbi, the fact that we're ultra Orthodox, the fact that I still keep Chalav Yisrael, all of these random things people think are so crazy and surprising. And for me, I'm I don't get it.
This is just my life.
Right. This is my life. And people that I hang out with are also pretty similar. I have a lot of friends that also were raised on Shlichus. And me and you went to Shluchim's camp together when we were kids. So we had a whole group of friends that were also on Shlichus. I think the great thing about Shluchim's camp was actually that when in elementary school, we were kind of isolated.
Yeah.
Right. The kids in our class, first of all, it was co-ed. Secondly, the kids in the class weren't necessarily religious. When we went to friends' houses on the occasion that we did in other neighborhoods, we would go with a sandwich maker because they weren't kosher enough. Or
and you brought the cheese.
It's always the jokes about going to your friends' houses with your mom would send you with a toaster oven. So I just
never really happened.
I never wanted to go. I think we went with sandwich makers. I don't remember the full blown toaster ovens, but I'm sure some of my siblings had to do that. I was the ninth, so I'm sure that they kind of learned that became crazy from maybe the first to the 8th. But going to Shluchim's camp was these are a bunch of people that are raised the same way as you, that have similar hecticness of your family living in the middle of nowhere, not having friends in the neighborhood, people in the community not being as frum as your family is and not being able to eat at other people's houses. But the Shluchim's camp kind of was the sense of camaraderie. We had these friends all over the world. I remember I was oh, I have a friend in Panama or Costa Rica and one in this country and one in Sweden and one here and one there. It was more of what's the word? Not just a positive experience, but it was something to be proud of.
Yeah.
They really made us feel proud. We were the lucky ones.
Yeah.
We should be proud of our childhood. We should be proud of the life that we were given, that our parents made for us. And I think that I've carried that sense of pride with me more than like the trauma and the victimness of like, oh no, we lived in the middle of nowhere and I had no friends in the neighborhood and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It was more of the sense of pride, which I don't know if it came specifically from Shluchim's camp or if it just came from my parents and how they raised us, or their sense of pride in their own Shlichus, and that carried on. But I know that my siblings, some of them don't agree with me and some of them don't have a similar perspective. But I've always had a sense of pride.
Yeah. And like who you are, your identity, your lifestyle.
Right. Or even that I was like, that I was on Shlichus. Like there's some type of, not like an eliteness, but there is a sense of pride. It's like compared a lot to military families, that they live in the middle of nowhere, far from their friends, far from their families, in communities that have nothing to do with them, completely different cultures. They can be uprooted at any time, which is not something that we had to do. You're kind of there and you're there forever. But there is a sense of like, first of all, pride, like internal pride, but there's also a respect that other people have for military families. And in the from like Lubavitch community, there is a sense of respect for Shluchim. Maybe not in the whole like Jewish world, because I don't know if they entirely understand the concept still, and definitely not in like the non-Jewish secular world because they don't understand the concept.
But I think in both, that's changing.
What do you mean?
I think the respect is growing because awareness is growing of like, you know, back in the 90s, like when we were growing up, nobody even knew what it was because it was just like getting developed.
Right.
And now people know, it's years later, and people kind of expect it and respect it. You go somewhere and you kind of expect there to be Chabad.
Right, but that doesn't mean that they respect it, because I travel a lot and I visit other Shluchim a lot. And on one hand, when I go there, I want them to know that I'm one of them, right? Because there's a sense of camaraderie that we have, that like, I'm one of you. I wasn't raised like in the middle of nowhere, Nepal, or in Vietnam, or in South America, you know? So I was raised in a first world country where people spoke my language, but I still feel like we're one and the same. And they don't recognize that in the beginning because I maybe don't look from enough, or I don't look Lubavitch, or, you know, and they're always very surprised. But the second that they find out, there is this like mutual respect of like, within seconds, I'm like given a job and I'm in the kitchen and I'm peeling carrots and I'm like washing lettuce for bugs. Within 2 seconds of them finding out that I'm one of them, I'm put to work, like I'm part of the family, which is really, I love that. But I have to like wait for them to know. And before I was traveling somewhere for like, in the beginning of my travels, my sister had asked me, she's like, oh, did you speak to the Rebbetzin and ask if she needed anything? And I was like, nope, I spoke to the rabbi. He said they're fine, like whatever. And she was like, no, you need to speak to the Rebbetzin. There are things that the rabbi doesn't know that the Rebbetzin needs. And she might not be comfortable asking a guy, or she might not be comfortable asking a random person in another community to bring, but there are things that she might need and you need to ask her. Like from one shlucha to another, we need to help each other. Wow. And I was like, a little bit emotional. I was like, oh my God, we are a family.
Yeah,
like
getting chills.
We're our own elite club of we all like, we're in this similar life with a similar mission, and we have to be there for each other. And we have to support each other. And when you travel to the other side of the world, it's so important to find out, what do you need? Do you need like candies for your kids? I've brought stockings to Colombia. I've brought chocolate and kids' clothes to other like, I'm bringing the most random things. A lot of times stockings, though. Like I'll always bring chocolates and candies for the kids. And I'll always just like bring snacks, and I'll always text them before I go. Hi, I'm coming from Crown Heights. Do you need anything from here? Is there anything I can bring? I have room in my suitcase. Like, this is how much space. I brought a suitcase of cream cheese once to a country. There's something to it being like, when you travel for family, you bring them things, right? Like you go home from somewhere and you bring them stuff. Like they live in the middle of nowhere. These kids haven't had Chal Yisrael chocolate in however long, and like little Pashkes gummies and these tiny little things that they don't get to have because they don't have them in Vietnam, you know? And there's just a sense of camaraderie that we have to be there for each other. So I've never had this like a victim type of, you know, it's never been about that. It's never been negative. It's never been I've never felt like I had a lot of negative feelings about Shlichus. Like everyone has negative feelings about their childhood.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure that there are things that I could find that are like not amazing and were a little nuts. But overall, I've chosen, I think, to find the sense of like pride in my childhood of like, we had a mission and my parents made this decision for us. If it was up to me, I would not have chosen that. But like I see people in Crown Heights, I'm like, I don't know if this was better. Like I would not have wanted to grow up here and go to school here. And I would not have wanted to be just like an average Joe random family in, you know, New Jersey. Like there's something about, in hindsight, that I appreciate.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think we need to shout out your sister. What's her name?
For what?
For telling you to ask the shlucha what she needs.
Chachi? Yeah. Yeah, it was just interesting to think about. And like every time that I'm bringing them stuff, there's something about it I really like. And I like to tell people that. I'm like, when you go somewhere, bring them things. Don't feel like you're going to this. A lot of times I meet people and they're like, oh yeah, you know, like, but we pay for meals and we're going there and we're like supporting them. I'm like, you're not doing them any favors. They're there for you, not the other way around. They live in the middle of nowhere. They moved across the world away from their friends and their family, from easy access to kosher food, and their kids do online schooling and don't have friends because people like you will be visiting this remote place and they have sacrificed all that they have sacrificed for you. The least you could do is bring them some matzah. I mean,
yeah, and they're not making money off of what you pay.
No, they're not
It's not
there to
covering
make
costs.
money off of you. People that go there with like a sense of entitlement of like, oh, they're there for me. So, you know, I'll pay full price for meals. Who do you, what?
Yeah. This is actually what I want to ask you. You said that people are like surprised by like your life. Like, is there something about your lifestyle that's just like surprising? As you've
I'm not
grown up?
surprised.
No, you're not surprised. Everyone else is.
I'm not surprised because these are choices that I made. I'm not like, oh, that's surprising that I.
No, I'm talking about your upbringing, but also.
No, because it seemed normal.
Yeah.
It seemed so normal to me that like we were just different. That was it. It was almost like everybody else was the odd ones and we were the normal ones. I don't know. You never think that you're the odd one until you meet like a significant amount of people. And then you're like, we were not the majority. Like that was not coming.
Yeah.
But I never thought that. I never felt that way. None of it felt surprising. Because I was in Shluchim's camp since I was 7.
Yeah.
Every single winter for 10 days. I was in some random ranch camp in Arizona with a bunch of people that were just like me.
Yeah. I remember that was like the highlight of my life for so long.
And you guys didn't even go that often.
No.
Yeah, I was there for 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years in a row.
I was there for 2. Why didn't I go more? I don't know.
I don't know. You guys didn't go till later.
But I'm also curious because you said like you would never choose it. Do you want to talk more about that? How like you appreciate it for what it was and for what it gave you and who it made you, but you wouldn't choose that for your own life.
I mean, it's definitely not an easy life.
Yes.
I feel like I served my time.
I love that.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
I did my service. It's like there's a certain amount of years of a military service. You serve your time. I obviously am like in the reserves.
Yeah.
You know, whenever I go home for like a Shabbos or Yantif and I'm like back to, you know, cooking and hosting and like serving and clearing up plates. And I go to shul and I have to talk to people and I have to like, you know, be like the rabbi's daughter role.
Right.
But I served my time. It's not an easy life.
Yeah.
My parents are like, they should have retired. If they were working a regular 9 to 5, they would have retired 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But you don't retire from Shlichus. You're there forever. It's a forever job. It's a 24-hour job. It was a joke in our family that anytime we went on vacation, somebody in the community would die and we would have to come back. There was just like, that's your whole entire life. There's no vacation days. There's no sick days. There's no like 401k. There's no retirement plan. Like your fundraising, your salary, you don't retire. You like never get time off. My dad will get phone calls at 3, 4 in the morning that someone's in the hospital. He'll fly out of bed and leave.
Yeah.
Someone's in prison. Someone's stuck somewhere. Someone needs help. There's a mental patient was let out from a psych ward and is on the sidewalk Erev Shavuos and nowhere to go. That's his life. It's almost like being an EMT constantly.
Yeah.
Which is incredibly rewarding. It's probably one of the most rewarding jobs, but it's not really a job. It's a lifestyle that you choose to do forever. And I can't do it. It's like, it takes a certain type of person, and I don't think I'm up for that job. Like the classes, my parents teach classes every day, and my mom goes to work every day. My dad's running a Chabad house every day and cooking dinner and cleaning the house. I'm like, that's crazy. I don't like to work. That's a lot of work. I don't like to work.
Yeah.
And that's the life that they've chosen. And I think that they find it incredibly rewarding. Hearing how many people they've affected, how many lives they've completely affected, people that they've saved, people that they've been there for, funerals that they were able to do. My dad was able to get people out of things and situations. And like, I'm sure that they've saved lives and like substance abuse and gotten people funding. And people come to San Diego a lot for like cancer treatments. And they'll be sent from like Israel without any family and living in my house for months at a time. Like the amount of good that my parents have done is crazy to think about. And I'm like proud and in awe of it. But I just don't think I'm up for that.
Yeah, I feel that.
I don't think people understand. I think like new young Balchuvas are like, oh, Shluchus is la-di-da, Isn't it fun? Let's do that. I don't think that they have a freaking clue.
Yeah, what message do you have for them?
I don't know. I mean, like maybe my parents were them though.
Right.
They're both Balchuvas. They both like got married young, like in their early 20s. And I don't know if they knew what they were getting themselves into, especially because there weren't a lot of Shluchim before then. We were talking about this before that like, our parents were some of like the first Shluchim to go out. There were obviously a few like
in the 60s.
Right, that were sent
70s,
out before.
Yeah.
But like the mass Shluchim were going out around when they did in like the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like they had anything to compare it to.
No.
They were just like, this is our mission.
Yeah.
Great. We're going to move to the middle of nowhere where we have no family, no friends, where we know nobody, start from the bottom up.
Yeah.
And just raise our family in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. We always joke about this because people are always like, oh, you grew up in Nebraska? Like, what do you do for meat? And it's just like a joke because it doesn't even like cross our minds. It's just like a regular thing. Like, figure it out. We wing it. Either we get it from here or from there. Or we like have it in the freezer for 6 months. Or like,
ugh, the freezers.
And yeah, the freezers, we could talk about that in a second. You're talking about people think it's like, are so surprised and think things are weird. Like, what do you do? What do you do for me? And it's just like, why is that a question? But it is a question. Like, it's a legitimate, valid question.
Right. I mean, it's also a question that I have when I travel. I'm like, what do you guys do for dairy products?
Right. Nothing.
Yeah, but we always had just the freezers.
The freezer. Let's talk about that.
So many freezers. We had like entire farms of dead animals in the freezers. We always had frozen milk. There's still something that I will still do to this day. Smelling milk when I open it.
100%.
I will always smell it. I will smell it when I open it if it's brand new. I will smell it if it's been in my fridge for 30 minutes. I will never pour that milk into my cup without smelling it first.
You will never do that.
The trauma of the bad milk just never leaves you. No. Mm-mm. I wonder if other people have a similar trauma, if that's a Shluchim trauma.
We can ask the people.
I wonder.
Yeah.
Does everyone, is it like a Chalav Yisrael milk trauma? Is it just that like we would get shipments of meat and milk from LA, and then for like a little while there was like a grocery store in San Diego, and then I think it burned down, and then we're back to getting stuff from LA. Sometimes we get stuff from local stores, but there's a lot of freezer stuff.
Yeah. You ever have like a story where like the freezer like got something with the power or something, or it broke?
You guys had that story?
No, I feel like
that for sure has happened.
At some point it happened.
That's why we have like 6 freezers.
So not memorable.
I think we have 3 or 4 freezers in my house. They're all plugged into different rooms. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's intentional or just like there's no space for that many freezers in one section. So I don't know if they all go out at once, but I'm sure that like just now when I was home, one of the freezers had stopped working. And then my mom just like moved everything to a different freezer. But you knew that that one wasn't working because it was empty.
Right. So
An empty freezer is suspicious.
It's very suspicious. Unless it's Erev Pesach, and then it's a different
No,
story.
but it's empty but full of tinfoil. That's different.
Empty but full of tinfoil. But what's your freezer of choice? The body bag freezer? Like
No, we don't do those.
Chest freezer? Like
The horizontal or the verticals?
horizontal? Yeah.
No, the horizontal ones take up too much space and seem like there are human remains that you would find in there. So no, that would never be my freezer of choice. Does anybody prefer that one?
I don't know if people prefer it. We always had one.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I feel like you can't even find things in there because they're just like buried under other like roasts.
Yeah.
No, we always had the vertical one. Sometimes it would be like a full freezer, like the full one. And sometimes it was like half of its fridge, half of its freezer.
Right.
So we have one that's like vertical halves. We have other ones that are horizontal halves. You know what I'm talking about? And then one that's just like a full freezer.
Right.
Yeah, but you're not Shluchim if you don't have the freezers.
No, absolutely not.
I never thought about that.
Yeah. What's like another like thing that like you'll
only find in Shluchim's houses?
Exactly.
Huh. What is something you'll only find in Shluchim's houses? Homeless people?
I feel like
Did you guys have those?
not homeless, but like borderline.
Yeah, I mean, you have all the characters. The characters are in every Chabad house, I think. There's like a few mentally ill patients, a few that probably should be in prison, but we're not sure. There's like, we had one growing up that was out on bail to my parents' house who was like a 13-year-old boy with an ankle bracelet.
Oh my God.
He lived in our house for a summer. All sorts of them. Like one that was running for president and wanted to like, I think that his presidential like pamphlet was all like mermaids and dolphins and he wanted to legalize everything.
That's exciting.
And he liked to go rollerblading at the beach in Speedos. So he was always great. He would come to his show like in scuba goggles. He's honestly one of my faves. Haven't seen him in a while.
It's hilarious.
All sorts of characters. Yeah. Which kind did you guys have?
I feel like you don't even see them as characters, just like see them as
They're
like,
just part of the
people.
community.
They're just like people.
Yeah, we had another one. She was converting and she was deaf. And she taught me sign language when I was like 12. I was the only one who would communicate with her. Nobody else had the energy or the patience to deal with her. And she taught me like the alphabet and counting. And she would teach me a lot of words. She would come over every week. And I spent a lot of time with her. But like in hindsight, she was a little bit odd.
Yeah. And then you're just like, oh, we were good friends.
Right. But at the time, that was normal. We also had a lot of students because we were near UCSD. So we had a lot of like psychology students. And I remember my parents, like, I think that like to become a psychologist, you have to do a certain amount of like practice tests or something. So they would come over and use all of us, all of my siblings, as like case studies where we would do like, yeah, each of us was taken like one at a time and they would ask you IQ questions and critical thinking questions. And then there was one where it was like the ink test where it's like ink splotches on a paper and then you have to just like quickly, the first thing that comes to your mind of what it looks like. And then I never found out if I'm incredibly intelligent or a little on the spectrum. Like they never give you your results. I think that one of them told my mom the results, but she didn't want to tell me. And I'm like, am I brilliant or not? Like, why won't she tell me?
Just tell me I'm brilliant.
Yeah, but I'm like, it was so odd. Like, that's not a normal thing in a normal household to just have like random college students testing your children.
Right.
But it was just so normal.
Totally normal.
Yeah, what a funny time.
Yeah. I'm always curious, and I think about this a lot for myself with the whole like Shlichus thing. It's driven by a sense of very strong, like internal values, a value system. And that's why our parents chose to do that, because they have this value system and they believe in what they're doing. That's the only reason why they're doing it. And then if we choose to not necessarily do that in the way that they did it, do you find that from your experience, has it been like a challenging transition?
Not really.
No.
I mean, my parents are gems of humans. And I think Shlichus has exposed them to the world. of like different types of people and different types of backgrounds. Like they're not sheltered individuals. You know what I mean? Like they've dealt with all different types of humans and, you know, all different walks of life. And I think for a while they had this like thing in their brain, like a block of like, no, but that's them and this is us and we're different. And my kids are different and they're not like that. And as we've gotten older, they've had to deal with all of my older siblings. They've learned that all humans are humans and we're all going to be very individual and we're all going to make our life choices, even if it doesn't necessarily agree with them. So thankfully, I'm one of the younger ones where I think most people like from households notice that like the older kids have a much more strict upbringing. And then the parents kind of slowly start giving up a little bit on the younger ones. So when you're the ninth, they were a little bit more lenient with me than probably my older siblings. But there's not like a sense, I don't think that they really mind. Like they would love nothing more than for their kids to go on Shlichus. I have one sister that is. But I think that they've learned to like accept their kids for who they are as people and be proud of us for the choices that we've made, even if it's not the same choices as them. I think that they've probably struggled with that for a while. Like you want your kids to like be exactly how you want to raise, like you raising them a certain way and you want them to turn out super Hasidish and like, you know, rah-rah for the Rebbe. But we do in just our own way.
Absolutely.
I'll rah-rah for the Rebbe, just not on Shlichus.
Yeah,
I'll do
exactly.
it.
Let's make that very clear.
In my own way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so important.
I don't know if they're like sad about it, if they're still disappointed about it, but they're like, these are my kids. And, you know, my dad will be like, my kids are not like this most from, he's like, but they're good kids.
Yeah.
He always says that. He's like, but my kids are good kids. And I think that they probably struggled with that for a while, like wanting us to be super Hasidish and wanting us to have the same goals and missions as them. And then at the end of the day, they realize that, you know what, above all else, what's actually the most important is that my kids are good kids.
Yeah. I'd love to hear that.
Yes. I mean, I don't know how long it took for them to get to that point, but I think that that's kind of where they're at now.
Yeah.
Unless they're lying to us and they're really just super disappointed in all of our life choices. Like, this is what we have to tell the kids so that they're not like upset, you know, have to go to therapy that their parents are so disappointed in them.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I actually want to say this point of like being raw, like all rah for Chabad and like the Rebbe's mission and everything. And I kind of feel like the stuff our parents did was very revolutionary at the time. So like late 80s, early 90s, like they did a lot of the kinds of things that they didn't exist in this universe.
Right.
Like it didn't exist on this planet. The types of programming they did, the education, the outreach, these random people at your house, like it was normal for you, but like it's not like it was normal for them. Like they weren't brought up with that. Even my parents who grew up Chabad, like it wasn't, the stuff they were doing wasn't quote unquote normal. It has become very normalized and people our age, people younger, even older, like totally went with that once it became like a thing. And I kind of feel like now where we're at, there's something else that we're kind of, what does it mean to be like rah for the Rebbe? Like there's something different that we're not really sure. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I feel like the rah-rahing that our parents did was on a larger scale.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm sure how I'm rah-rahing. The rah-rah is now a thing. Like I don't know if I'm sure how I'm doing that. Yeah. You know, like I find myself, like I do not look the most Lubavitch. I am aware. I know that. But I'll find myself in circles that are not necessarily Lubavitch, or I'll find myself at Chabad houses with other people who are not Lubavitch. And the second that somebody says something about the Rebbe, the second that somebody says something entitled about the Shluchim, about anything like that, I go off.
It's over.
I go off full rah-rah. Like I have never sounded more Hasidish. Like I am like the Rebbe's emissary than in that moment. I'm like, 100%. You do not know what these people are doing for you. You don't know what the Rebbe stood for. Like I go, I'm like, I don't even know where this person comes from. And it's so funny because it's not me on like the regular day. I'm not like running around town rah-rahing the Rebbe. It's just not a common thing that I do. It's not even something I think about on the daily. It's like if I'm ever put into a position where I have to, I will rally.
Yeah.
Because I have to, and someone's got to. And someone's got to put some people in their place sometimes when they are speaking like just idiots.
Yeah. And very, very disrespectful.
But they don't even know that it's disrespectful.
No
That's the part that's so irritating.
Yeah.
It's so irritating that they don't even know how disrespectful it is when someone like makes this is what people love. Oh, so triggering. Okay. When you're in a Chabad house in the middle of nowhere and you have these like successful 5 towns, Flatbush guys that are like fully decked out designer, like sitting at a Chabad house, right? And they'll make a comment like, oh, yeah, it's so uncomfortable when they like make comments about the Rebbe being Mashiach. And I was like, I do not care whether you agree or you don't agree, whether I agree or I don't agree. But you have no right talking ill of these people who sacrifice everything for you. Like, I will go off on them.
Absolutely.
Completely. Like, I do not care if you agree or not.
Absolutely not.
In general, I don't know if this is like controversial or not. I don't like when non-Lubavitchers talk about the Rebbe.
Interesting.
Because I find it so condescending in either way. Mm-hmm. You know, like either they're like talking bad and I'm like, ugh, so frustrating.
Don't need to be having this conversation.
Right? Like, I just don't have the energy for this right now. I don't have the energy. I can't.
No.
Or they're like making it comes off as feeling mockery.
Yeah.
You know, like people that do like the Rebbe's, like the arm swing or like they'll fake shuckle when they're singing something. And I'm like, this feels like you're mocking. And it will make me like clench my teeth and like, I can't handle it.
Yeah.
That might be it. That's a personal thing. I think that these are personal issues that I should probably work on. But it's really in those times that I feel like I need to defend Lubavitch that I'm rah-rahing the most. And when you live in Crown Heights, you don't have to.
Yeah.
Like everyone here speaks the same language. We all understand the same things. We all like, you know, similar upbringings, whether you grew up in Crown Heights or not. Like there's a similar understanding of like everyone's relationship with the Rebbe and everyone's type of understanding of Shlichus and what everyone's like role is with like Mitzayim and Bal Teshuvas. Like all of these things are kind of understood. It's like when you're dealing with people that don't understand it, I should probably be taking like lots of deep breaths and like, okay, Gitti, like they just don't understand. We're just going to educate them calmly.
Yeah. But sometimes they don't want to hear.
I don't know if that's the truth.
Sometimes.
Nobody likes to get attacked.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I attack, but I come off very harshly with my words. And I think that sometimes no one's ever educated them.
Yeah. But I think sometimes like harsh words are warranted. Like if someone,
but a lot of times if you're giving actual harsh words, they're just going to come off and be like, she's just as crazy as the rest of them.
Right.
So you don't really want to do that.
So how do
but
you do
I
that?
kind of like that they see that like on one hand, I am one of them because I can look like you and I can party like you and I can, you know, do I can rage like you. But on the same time, we are not the same.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm in Vietnam keeping Chalav Yisrael because I'm Lubavitch. I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
You know, like I almost like the Chalav Yisrael thing just for the shock factor of letting people know, like, just because I look one way doesn't mean I am one way.
Yeah. Well, I think Chalav Yisrael is one of those things that really bothers them.
Yes.
So that's like it
does.
It really, really bothers them.
It does. And that's
so
its own debate of like, Rav Moshe Feinstein. I'm like, I'm not doing this right now. That's not the conversation I was looking for.
I keep Chalav Yisrael. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
I just don't want to keep, but there's something like a lot of times, the times that I've had to stand up and explain to them, I think that they've appreciated it.
Yeah.
They're like, wow, I never thought of it that way. Mm-hmm. I've never realized that that's how it works. Like, I think that some people, they'll go to these Shluchim's houses and they're like, oh, well, we were paying the American price and not the Israeli price. And, they should be thanking us for paying more. And I'm like, they are still coming out in the negative, even with you paying your $25 a meal for 3 courses. Like, you're not doing them a crazy favor. You're not.
Yeah.
If anything, they are the ones risking everything for you. Like, it's so twisted, people's sense of entitlement when they go to Shluchim's houses, and that really upsets me.
I really would love to talk about that. That was a big part of why I wanted you to share your story, is because people don't see Shluchim as people a lot of times.
Right.
And I think it's something that I've been trying to reclaim in my own experience. And I'd love to hear your experience on that. But there was I was in Williamsburg at like this clothing store, probably like 5-6 years ago, maybe even a little more. And they're like, "Oh, you're Chabad. We love Chabad." My husband because they're like in the clothing business. So they go to China. My husband goes to Chabad in China, and so great. And I just told her the Chabad Rebbetzin in China is my mother's friend. Like, and the only reason why I said I wasn't trying to like clout chase. I was just like, she's a person. Like, she grew up with my mother. They're regularly in touch. You know, she's like a human being who has her own children, has her own family, has like a life, has relationships, friends. You know, like you're sitting here with your friends.
But why
like,
do you think that she didn't know that?
There was something about it that felt like it was just like a corporation, and it's not a corporation at all.
I mean,
it wasn't.
Right.
Now it's becoming.
I don't know if it's my main issue, but there's something about people, I don't know if it's Lubavitchers or not Lubavitchers, people that go to Shluchim a lot, there's a lot of entitlement.
Yes.
Like, they are there for me, and they're there to service me. And, you know, if people complain about the food, I've heard people complain about the food in a freaking third world country of glot kosher meals that these people just had to like import and source from somewhere, and the rabbi goes to some remote area to get crazy. Like
the freezers.
Ugh, that irritates me also. The complaining. There's just a lot of entitlement. And I noticed this also growing up, this sense of like us being there for you. And it almost felt like we belonged to the community.
Right.
Like, my parents, I honestly don't know. Do they belong to me or do they belong to the community? Mm-hmm. We kind of share them.
Yeah.
But I always had this, like, even when I go home now, I still have this issue of like, I remember like I would want to like get dressed up and look nice and go to shul. And people in the community would make weird comments to me, or I would get this feeling that like they felt like they owned me, or like they had purchased my clothes.
Wow.
That like their donation of like $200 a year was the reason why like I looked put together. Or when I go home, like I would be so uncomfortable to walk into my Chabad house now, at 32 years old with my own job, buying my own stuff, being on my own since I was 18 years old. I would be uncomfortable walking into my Chabad house now in expensive clothing because I wouldn't want them to look at me and think like, oh, how could she afford that? Like, why is she not supporting her parents' Chabad house and I am? Mm-hmm. There's just like, they own them.
Yeah.
They own everything in your house. If you have a house that is too nice, like there's a bit of resentment almost that you'll feel from the community of like, I don't know. It's so twisted.
Yeah.
It's so twisted. I mean, I understand why they do, because they're like, oh, you know, we pay membership. Mm-hmm. But the rabbi also doesn't get a salary. And your $200 a year is not supporting anyone.
Yeah.
It's like one kiddush at shul. It's not buying my clothes. It's not decorating the house. It's not the furniture in the house. It's not my haircuts. Like it's none of those things. I don't know if this is like my own inner issue that I've felt this way and that they didn't try to come off like that at all. Mm-hmm. That they owned us.
Yeah.
And they owned my parents. And if you aren't there for them, like we always had to be super nice and super polite. Like you could never be upset at anyone in the community. I don't remember ever having like fights with kids in the community and like how that would play out. I don't remember. I don't think I ever did. I didn't really have anything have many friends in the community anyways. But if that's how I felt, that's how people treat Shluchim all over the world.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they deal with that. Like, do they just ignore that they're now property of these like communities?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's another reason I can't do shlichus.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
No.
I need to be my own person, owned by nobody.
Yeah, what's crazy is that what I was saying was more just like that they're just kind of like objects or just there to serve. But you kind of took it to like the next level, which I really deeply resonate with. Like that you're always answerable.
Yeah.
Always answerable to them, how you spend your money, how you spend your time, where you go on vacation. The fact that you can even go on vacation because like every time you travel somewhere, it's a business trip.
Yeah.
Did that ever happen?
Not really. We used to go to Big Bear every summer in the mountains. We'd get like a cabin every summer. I don't remember it being a business trip. I mean, I remember there were some other Chabad families that would also go. We didn't love that part, but we were all like we were trying to go on vacation away from all the people that we knew. And then other people would show up and then we were all doing summer vacation together. But I don't remember like going somewhere specific to meet people, but California is maybe a little different than Nebraska. I've never been to Nebraska. I feel like there's maybe more people in California than Nebraska.
Slightly. Several more people.
So no, we never had that. But we did always have to come home early because someone would always die. But yeah, no, we were always, I still feel like that.
Yeah. So I'm really happy that you articulated it. And I'm just really curious.
Do you not resonate with that at all? Like when you walk into your Chabad
100%.
house, like how, like people would probably look at you the same way.
No, I really resonated with what you said, like even more with I said what I said, and then you kind of like took it to like the next. I'm literally like breathing into what you're saying. I don't know if you noticed. I'm just like, oh my God, like I never like really articulated in that way.
I've always noticed that as a kid. As a kid, I would notice that because people would make weird comments to me.
So I have noticed something that really bothered me was always having to explain everything.
Like what?
Like explain the way I'm dressed, explain
to
the way
community
we do this.
members?
Yeah. Just like explain.
Right, like,
this is
oh,
what
I
we
got
do
it.
on
I
Shabbos.
remember
Like,
we would have to explain like, oh, I got this on sale.
Right.
I got this at Marshall's. You would have to tell people that.
Only Marshalls.
Right, like they would have to know that you didn't pay full price for something. And I remembered people in my community making comments to me about other Shluchim's kids and being like, yeah, isn't it so crazy that that girl wears designer stuff? And I'm like, how dare you?
How dare you?
Like, how dare you tell other people how they spend their money? And like, if anything, we live in the middle of nowhere for you. At least we should look cute.
The least. The least.
The least we could do is look cute, okay?
Yeah.
Don't take that away from us.
No, but we know how to look cute on a budget. That's for sure.
I know. It really does teach you so many great life skills, Shlichus. So many.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of my greatest that I learned. I mean, all the things in my life I've learned pretty much from my mom, but how to make something from nothing. Like, you know, when there's like, no one's RSVPing to your house for Shabbos meals. Like there might be 15 people and there might be 30. You never know. And there's something to like in my house where like when people would show up, you never knew how many people were coming for Shabbos.
Yeah.
My mom would just like create things from nothing. Like there would be a corn salad out of like some canned corn and some canned other things. And then the cucumbers became a cucumber salad. And then somehow there was some other type of rice dish. Like things would just come out of nowhere. And I am so good at that.
Yeah.
I'm so good at it. I'm also so good at making an entire meal in like 20
seconds.
minutes. Right. Like no time because people would just show up at the house at like 11 o'clock. And I remember like Shluchim would show up and like my mom was so against microwaves. She's still, I think, so against microwaves. But like we need one in our house because people would show up at 12 o'clock at night expecting a home-cooked warm meal. And like you need a microwave. Yeah. So there's like always leftovers in the fridge and there's always food and there's like always like an abundance of everything because you never know who's showing up.
No.
So I've learned that. I think I took a lot of positives from Shlichus.
Yeah.
Do you think that you did?
Yeah.
More positives than negatives?
At this point, yeah. I think I've always been like super positive about it most of my life.
I feel like we should have had somebody like polar opposite on this next podcast.
No, I
like
think
someone who had a horrible experience with Shlichus.
No. Yeah, but in a lot of ways, I think in my 20s, early 30s, a lot of that shifted for me. And I started seeing things for what it was and kind of like unpack. So like very recently, unpacking a lot of those things that I kind of never even like had a chance to.
Like what type of things?
I think for me, constantly needing to explain everything. This is how we wash our hands. This is explaining what Kiddush is, explaining what covering the challah, and explaining the tznius, and explaining the this and then that. And then when you explain, and then like explain about the dating process, and then like you keep coming back and like, where's like, are you not seeing anyone? Like, what's going on? Because I at one point you like explain how the shidduch process works
to community members,
and then you come back and it's like, you're not married. Like, what's
when you
going
go back
on?
home, you're saying, oh,
and they're just like, what's going on? I'll be like, beats me. Like, I can't explain it. I think even specifically the way the process of how shidduchim works in our community, and how I think I have a lot more understanding within our community that the fact that I'm not married, and I feel like I feel a lot of judgment.
From what? From the community? From your from your childhood community?
Childhood community of like, what's
really?
going on? Yeah. Which is very surprising to me when it started. I almost didn't notice it for a few years.
Yeah.
And then I realized like they don't see me as a person who is just living their life and things happen when they happen. Versus like, oh, like you're religious, you're Orthodox. Like
that should have happened for you.
That should have happened for you.
I don't know if I feel that when I go home. I don't really feel that in general in life. So maybe that's why I don't care.
No, I don't really feel it elsewhere. I just felt it there, which is weird.
You know what's also interesting about your community? On top of the entitlement of like everything else, they feel entitled to like ask such invasive questions.
Such invasive questions.
Like they own everything about you and they have to know everything about like, oh, are you seeing anyone? Like, why is that your business?
Why is that your business?
I don't even know you. Like I never come home. I don't come to shul on purpose. Like I haven't seen you since I was like 8 years old. On what planet is that a normal question to ask somebody you don't know?
Like you ask people that you care about.
But they will ask such invasive questions because like they are entitled to know.
100%.
It's so odd.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that make you feel like you're an object?
It's not so much an object. It's like you're this weird figure that like you're kind of held to like a higher standard, which is odd because why?
I wonder if that's the way that we set it up, though.
Us personally or our parents?
Not us, but like us as like the Chabad institution of that.
Definitely. I mean, not that we're held to a higher... Yeah, actually, that is true. It's that I think that Shluchim that go out to the middle of nowhere, that like they could be worried that like, oh, our kids are going to be exposed to, you know, all the things of the world. But on the other hand, there's like a common thing that I see a lot where it's like we're different, right? We act differently, we dress differently, we eat different things. We're like royalty, you know, this like quote unquote, like we're different and it's because we're special and blah, blah. Like they like to do that and like instill this sense of like pride and that's why we're different. And I guess maybe it works for some people and it doesn't really work for others, but it works for like little kids. Right? Like, oh, it's because I'm different. That's why I can't eat your M&Ms. Or like, that's why I can't come to your house without the toaster oven. And there's just like, I'm trying to think about, I'm like losing my train of thought here. What are we talking about?
Yeah, wondering if like, because this theme of like them being entitled, like, is that something that they were taught? Like that you are entitled to my time. Like
There's no way they could have been taught that. It's the same way when you walk into a restaurant. Right? And the people that are going to the restaurant feel entitled to have good service, for their waiter to wait on them on like hand and foot, kissing your feet and, you know, making you the only priority in their whole life and bringing you the food exactly how you wanted it to be. And it's so common for people in restaurants to be like, oh, this waiter's taking too long. Or, oh, like without thinking for a second, like they're a human and maybe they're dealing with issues today. Maybe they have family issues. Maybe they're like in pain.
Maybe they're waiting 10 tables.
Maybe they're overworked and overtired and have like babies at home and they're like underpaid. Like it's it's more common for people to go into a restaurant and act entitled than to go into a restaurant and be like, they are humans.
Right.
And they're here and they're just doing a job. It's just a job, and they're people, and they go home and they have their own lives and their own families just like me. And most people go into a restaurant for some odd reason and feel like they are like, I'm the royal family and I deserve for them to kiss my toes and give me exactly what I want when I want it, like, and snap my fingers at them. Like, do you teach people to act that way? No. I think that they just, for some reason, it's so common for people to walk into a restaurant and act that way. Yeah. You almost have to learn to like think for a second that they are humans. Like, I think that that's what you have to like take extra like mental work to think about.
Yes. I actually love how you put that.
Really? Because I feel like that was not eloquent at all.
I really love how you put it. Number one. Number two, I feel like that is the point of this conversation. Because when we speak in these terms, like when you talk about like, oh, the clothing, the this, the that, the designer, it's so hard to even like understand what you're even saying.
Really? Because I feel like it's so regular.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about like for listeners who have no concept of this type of entitlement. And you're
you
like,
think
hey,
they would be like, oh, that's weird.
You'll be like, what is that? But it's like, oh, it's just like a waiter. And it's like, oh, I've been entitled.
Yes. Everybody has been.
I've been entitled being at a restaurant annoyed about something, right? With whatever the waiter was doing. And it's like, yeah, it does take effort to think of the waiter as like a human.
Yes.
I always like to ask like the service, whoever is like providing any kind of service, I always like to ask them for their name.
That's nice.
So that's like the way that I try to like make them feel
human.
Like a human.
Yeah.
So that's just like one tip. But that was a great way to like ground what we were saying. So I appreciate that.
I wonder if I'm like extra nice to wait staff. I mean, people make a lot of jokes. They make fun of me a lot. That like, Gitti, we can't leave you unattended for 1 second or you become friends with the help. Everywhere. I'm like on first name basis with every bartender
100%.
At a L'chaim I go to. They're so friendly when they see me again.
You recognize the people.
I get all the drinks everywhere. They give me free stuff. I will walk into restaurants and I'm just like, when you make that decision to treat people like they are humans, they will love you forever. They honestly love you. They all want to be my best friend.
Yeah.
Because they're like, wow,
yeah,
this person is not bossing me around and like snapping their fingers at me. Yeah. And they do want to know my name, like you were saying. And they like, I'll make jokes with them. And I like, you don't really think about like their dynamic between each other.
They're working together all day.
Right. Like even like they'll make jokes or they'll be in a fight with each other. And like, I like to like call them out. I'm like, what did they say to you? You guys having drama? Like what happened?
Give me the tea.
Like the second that you treat them like they're humans, they love that.
Yes.
But I think it also makes you, it can only benefit you by doing that.
100%.
Because then there's like, you're not angry and you're not like impatient. Like, why are they not serving me? And why did me? It's like so selfish. And when people treat Shluchim with the me, like how does that help you in life? You're just going to be upset because they are humans and they have families and they have their life and they have so many other things that they're dealing with and taking care of. You are not their priority.
Yeah.
But they don't think about that. All the people in the community think that they are a priority. They are the priority.
And in many ways, they are prioritized.
Right. My dad will literally fly out of his bed at 3 a.m. because some person in my community like is locked out of their house or is in the hospital or their grandfather died and they need to do something with the body, or you know, somebody died on a cruise ship and they end up in San Diego and he has to go get the body. Like the craziest things that they deal with. And like people in the community are almost, I don't know if I would say that they're prioritized over we were, like the kids. I never really got that feeling, honestly. I think some of my siblings maybe did, that like I've heard them say that like, oh, my parents cared more about the community than they did about us. I don't know if I ever felt that way because like my mom calls me every single day and she knows everything about what's going on with everybody. And
she's up to date on the drama.
Yeah. But like I also remember like being treated a little bit differently. Like each one of us was kind of treated a little differently growing up, which they were really trying their best. I don't know if it was the best, but they were trying their best. Like, I remember that we were all treated differently, the way that we were educated, the way that we were disciplined. They knew that I need less disciplining than some of my other siblings, so maybe they were harder on me than on others. Or they knew some people were better in school than others, and they were disappointed when I got a B, but if another sibling got a C, they were so proud of them. Like, and as a kid, I was annoyed. I was like, what is this double standard? But growing up, I'm like, they're good parents.
Yeah.
They were great. And they knew that I didn't need the discipline. Mm-hmm. They knew that other kids did. They needed like incentives. I never got paid to do my homework, but I know some other kids in my family surely did. Like, I never got any of my bat mitzvah gifts that weren't like Judaica, because even one's Judaica. But some of my other siblings got like laptops and things like that because that's what they needed. Mm-hmm. And I never felt like I knew that I was sharing my parents with the community and that like we were on family vacation and they would leave because someone in the community needed them. But I never felt like the community was more important than we were. We just understood that like if somebody was coming to our house for Shabbos, we were going to be kicked out of our rooms. I knew that would happen. I think I even liked it. I was like almost annoyed when we didn't have guests.
Right.
But I had other siblings that were like, no, I need my personal space. And they were resentful when we had guests that like my parents didn't care about my own personal space. They cared more about having guests and I was constantly kicked out of my room. It was just a very different perspective of the same experience. Mm-hmm. And I don't feel resentful at all. But some of them, I think that my parents cared more about the community or spent more time with them or that they were more important.
Yeah. And that's real feelings to have.
Right.
Yeah.
I get where they're coming from. I just don't, I didn't see it that way.
Yeah. I feel like something needs to shift.
That they need to work less hard.
Yes.
I don't think that they can. Kashrus becoming more of like a widespread thing and for it to be easier now than 30 years ago to like import things.
Yeah.
Meant to bring out Shluchim and to like there's like certain countries will like one rabbi will shecht and send it to another country and they have some type of agreement or whatever. Like that took years and years and years for them to set up.
Yeah.
And it's probably so much easier now to get Chol Yisrael stuff than it was 30 years ago. Like people were not flying to these remote countries and cheese and these products were probably super expensive and maybe countries were giving them problems about importing things and they didn't understand the concept of Shluchim. And a lot of countries now they're held to like, I see that like the governments respect them. I was in Colombia and there were like 8 military guys with machine guns protecting the place.
Wow.
Yeah. I've been to a lot of Chabad houses where like the government protects them. And there's a mutual understanding. In Vietnam, the government, they're communist. So I guess they're like not into organized religion. But the locals it's illegal for them to go into the Chabad house.
Wow.
They're only there for tourists officially.
Interesting.
But like think about what they had to do and who they had to fight to get to the places that they are now.
We've seen the fights.
Right. So I don't know if it needs to be like less work for them or if just naturally as time progresses, it will become easier. But like that is Shlichus.
Yeah.
Hard work. It's hard work. You know, and even maybe it becomes easier as like they send out more Shluchim and then there's other like the young, new, fresh ones that are able to help out the older OGs. Like maybe that becomes easier for them. But I don't think it's meant to be like an easy peasy job.
No, it's not.
No. I mean, maybe they didn't realize how difficult it actually is when they first were like, oh, go live in the middle of nowhere, move your entire family and try to keep kosher. Just like move to somewhere where you know nobody and go knocking on doors.
Yeah.
No, I don't think anybody thought it would be an easy job. I don't think it's meant to be. That's why it's not for me.
Yeah. So I have like 2 more questions. Actually, one question is there something that you wish people knew about you that you want to share?
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, I like the shock factor.
Yeah.
Of like when people find out, since I travel a lot, and I hear a lot from people like, oh, it's so crazy that you're able to travel. Like I could never because I keep strict kosher. I'm like, okay, honey, I travel with a suitcase of food wherever I go. So tell me more about how you can't do it. And that like jaws are on the floor like, no, you don't do that. I'm like, yeah, I keep Shabbos and I keep kosher and I make it work because I've decided that I want to make it work. Like that's fun for me. But there's not like something specific that I'm like, the people need to know this about me. No, I'm also an open book and anybody who knows me can ask me whatever you want. I don't have anything that I'm like super secretive and shady about. I post my whole life on Instagram. It's not really filtered, is it?
No, it's not.
No.
We love it. That's why we love it.
That's why I can't have strangers following me because it's my actual life and like my everyday, my day-to-days and my like current location.
Yeah.
But I'm not like a secretive, shady type of person. I feel like I'm pretty much an open book. It's just that there's a lot of false first impressions that people get, which I don't know if it's insulting or if it's just amusing.
Yeah. I think that's why I asked you that question, because I do feel like your first impression is not necessarily who you really are.
Oh, no, it's not. It's not at all.
Yeah.
People are also surprised that I'm sensitive. People like to find out that I'm sensitive and they're like, well, I did not see that coming. I'm like, I cry all the time. I'm so emotional. They don't realize that. Like, I don't think that everyone needs to know everything about you.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fun when there's like little curveballs and surprises.
Mm-hmm. So maybe you don't want them to know.
No, it's not that I don't want them to know. It's like if you ask, I'll tell you. Or if you like, you know, see me crying in a stairwell, don't be alarmed. It happens, okay? I'm a human.
Just tell me I'm beautiful.
Exactly. Yeah. But I don't think there's anything specific that I'm like, the people need to know this.
Right. What are your closing remarks?
I think that this is like an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah.
It's also not one that like I have frequently or that I even think about or that like comes up often or that I ever have to like articulate.
Yeah.
You know, like occasionally people will ask me like, oh, you were on Shlichus? What was that like? It was good. Okay, great. And they move right along. Mm-hmm. Or they ask you like, oh, would you go on Shlichus? No. Why? I served my time. Like there's some things that like I've had to repeat over and over and over again. A lot of people don't know that I was on Shlichus. But only recently, the last few times that I've had people bring up this conversation of like wanting people to sit around a table and discuss their experience of growing up on Shlichus, did I even start thinking about how it wasn't common.
Yeah.
And how different my childhood was to a lot of regular people.
Yeah.
Like it's not something I ever thought about.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel like I have a whole lot of trauma, and I don't think it was that weird or that odd. My parents love me. Like, you know, I don't know how nothing crazy ever happened with all the strangers that ended up through our house. Like, we were the lucky ones. Like, we turned out somewhat normal, I think.
And I think also some of the stories or anecdotes, they're not even like memorable to you.
Right.
It's like normal. You're
like that just was regular. We had like this homeless person and this one running for president. Like those were just like funny characters of my life. They're not like these huge parts of my life that stick with me on the day to day. I don't even think about it. I never like, you know, people are like, oh, I have memories from when I was 3 years old. I'm like, I don't really think about it.
Yeah.
The memories you have from when you were that young are because you've resurfaced the memories between then and now, right? Like it's something that you go back on and you remember. Like I have random memories of like being on a playground or whatever, but I don't really remember things unless someone asks me something specific and I need to like sit there and like rack my brain to go back 25, 30 years of memories. And then I'm like, oh, wow, that was odd, wasn't that? I completely forgot that happened. Like it's not something that I think about on the daily, and it's not something anyone ever asks you about.
Yeah. I also feel like you're very present in your experience.
I like to be.
I think it comes across as that.
Yeah, like I know like when I travel a lot, some people are like, oh, you don't ever keep in touch and you don't call. I'm like, when I'm somewhere, I'm there. I don't think about the other places. I don't really miss the other places. I kind of forget you exist, which is maybe bad. I don't know. But the people that I'm with, I'm really with them.
You are.
And I like to be fully present wherever I am. And I also like at the same time to share that with the people back home. And that's why I like my Instagram so much, because it's the sense of like connecting there and here without fully putting myself there. You know, people that constantly have FOMO, like wanting to be somewhere else, or like, oh, take me back. And they post their like beach pictures for the next like 6 months after a trip. I never do that.
You're like, I will not. I was there.
I loved it. I loved it when I was there, and I'm happy that I'm back, and I'm excited for my next place.
Yeah.
But I'm never like dwelling on the past. I'm not like sitting in my childhood,
Right.
you know, and like resentful. And I'm not trying to work through the past. Like it happened and you move right along and it was great or it was bad or it was stressful or whatever happened. I've been on trips that weren't great. And at the time, I'm like in the middle of a gas station in Costa Rica on the floor with like no cabs, and it's the middle of the night and no one's available. And I'm like, I'm going to die here. And at the time it was a little stressful, but in hindsight, I laugh about it. And then you move right along. Like I take things, I think, a little lightly.
Yeah.
And, you know, I like the experience while it's happening, and then you move right along. And maybe that's why I thought Shlichus was a positive experience, because I don't know, I remember the positives. And it could be that I have other siblings or there's other people that were on Shlichus that took it a little heavier.
Yeah.
And it really like stays with them.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know if it's a personality thing. I just never did.
Yeah. Well, hearing your perspective has been really powerful for me, and I'm really grateful that you shared.
I hope it's not like a super delusional, like happy-go-lucky experience of like, this girl loved it.
No.
She loved it. She had the best experience of her life.
I mean, you did share some like really heavy, challenging parts of it. Maybe you don't see it.
It doesn't
that.
feel heavy.
Exactly. And you shared it in like a light way, which is cool. And I don't even know how we even got to talking about it, because we never, like, you and I, like, we met as like
right, but it's not something that we ever talked about. Even since then,
Never.
we're like we reconnect after what, like 20 years.
Yeah.
And we're just like, oh, hey, I know you guys, and we just carried on without.
We're just friends, but we never talk about.
Yeah, isn't that interesting that other Shluchim's kids never talk about their shared experience?
Yeah, but it was interesting because it came up when we were just. I don't even know how it came up.
I remember
else was in the conversation.
when I was at Shul one time, and they were discussing wanting to have a panel. The panel that I was talking to you about before.
That's what
they wanted a panel, and it was me and a few other. Were you there in that conversation?
At Shul?
Yeah.
No.
So then we were talking about it, and then I was at a birthday party a little while ago, and I brought it up because the same people were there. And I was like, hey, remember when the rabbi was talking about this? And then I was at Shul, because I was talking about it recently, I brought it up to the rabbi this week, and I was like, hey, remember when we were supposed to have that panel? And he was like, oh, why didn't we ever do that? Like, he's like, I feel like nobody ever pushed me to do it, and we really should do it. And then I think I just seen you right after, and I brought it up again.
Yeah, and I was like, come on the podcast, let's talk about it. And I'm so glad we did.
Yeah. I feel like once somebody brought it up that like that wasn't a regular schmegular childhood, it's something I've been thinking about more.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I feel like we should be talking to each other. People like military families talk to each other. They have support groups, I think, you know, like why don't we have support groups?
Let's do it.
We should start one.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need a support group, but there's something like comical almost about our shared cuckoo childhood. Yeah, that's
like
why I feel like a panel might actually be interesting, because me and you, I think, maybe have more of like, we take more positives from it. And it could be, and it's definitely, there's definitely people who were traumatized and had horrible experiences, and they are beyond resentful. And I know somebody who, remember I was telling you that I don't like when people talk about the Rebbe?
Yeah.
This girl, parents are Shluchim, and she wrote something online of an angry letter to the Rebbe, an angry one, that he ruined her life, and her parents moved to the middle of nowhere, and she didn't know anybody, and they spoke a different language, and they were so isolated. And I read it, and instead of, if anybody else had written that, I would have like boiled my blood. Her writing it from one Shluchim's child to another, I was like, I get it. I get this. I didn't have the same experience, but I completely understand this. It was so interesting for me to even notice the difference of like how I responded to it, and the way that I respect her so much for like voicing that. I get it. It wasn't a positive experience for everybody. You know, whether there are people that were like abused by community members, and there were people who really, really, really struggled.
Yeah.
And, you know, there are people who lived in actual third world countries in crazy conditions. Like, I was one of the lucky ones. We were in America. We were in San Diego, perfect weather, you know, but not everyone had the same experience. Yeah. And I think that that's interesting to have a panel of different types of people and different types of perspectives. I don't think I've ever experienced Shluchim that were living in like actual crazy conditions. I was telling you, like, I don't really think about my Shlichus as a kid on the day-to-day. When I'm at Chabad houses, I think about it all the time. Because I like to feel like we're a family and I'm one of them and we are one in the same. And there's this sense of pride that comes back up to the surface when I'm there.
Maybe I need to travel with you.
Maybe. This could just be me and being like this, you know, always the sunshine and roses. I don't know.
But I'm saying like that maybe.
Don't get me wrong. I've met Shluchim. Well, not actual Shluchim, but like the mushroom Shluchim who were not my favorite. I don't know if it was a language barrier, but the ones that I've encountered would openly tell us that they didn't like Americans and they didn't like American girls. And that pissed me off a lot. But I feel like I'm talking about a lot on this podcast about how triggered things make me and how it boils my blood. I'm really not like that in general. But there was something so hurtful about that like, I'm here to help and support, and like, I'm not like, the thing that I noticed and what I've told myself, what I told other people that I was with who were also very triggered by it, was that they are not here for you. They're here for the Israeli backpackers who know nothing about anything. And that's what they're trained for. And that's what they do. They are not here to have these like deep existential conversations about Judaism and theory and what they don't understand it. They can't do it. That's not what they're trained for. They have zero experience in that department. They barely even speak English. And they also don't understand this concept of like, I was with friends who were also from, but like with blue hair or like, you know, not dressing like white shirt, black pants. And their rabbis could not wrap their heads around the concept about being from and looking a little different. They didn't understand it. Like they were either super, super hyper cuckoo balchuva Israelis, where it's like very black and white, or they're not familiar with Americans and like self-expression and like being an individual, like no concept. But to the Israelis showing up to the Chabad houses in tank tops and booty shorts, so warm, so welcoming. I was at Chabad houses where literally I would walk in, the rabbi said nothing. I walk over to the restaurant, I order food, the rabbi says nothing. I sit down and eat a whole thing and whatever, the rabbi says nothing. Not a hello, not a how are you, where are you from? Nothing, literally nothing. And the second that a group of Israelis were approaching the door, he got up from his seat, he opened the door, he welcomed them in, he sat them down. Where are you from? How long are you here for? What can I get you? And it honestly, it hurt. Yeah. So maybe that's just me back to being like, that's me feeling entitled of like, you are here to be nice to me. Right. You're here. But that was hurtful for me because for me, I'm like, I'm one of you. Like, why are you? It was just hurtful. It was like being rejected by your own family, which is a little maybe dramatic.
I don't think it's dramatic.
Dramatic.
No, I don't think it's dramatic.
No.
I think it's exactly what it is.
But that also is that's me like. Being entitled. That like, they don't speak English. They're really not there for me. That's what I kind of just had to tell myself. They're not here for me. Like, I'm fine. I know about Judaism. I'm not asking them questions about the Parsha, even if I don't know what it is. Like, I'm not there asking them about kashrus and about like mivtzayim things. Like, I don't need this speech and I don't need them to do kiruv on me, but they can't relate to me at all. And I don't know if that's just the mushroom shluchim, because I've never encountered that with like actual shluchim. Besides for that, it's only been positive experiences.
Yeah. But it is really difficult when you're in an experience and you just feel like so misunderstood. So deeply misunderstood.
Right, but not everyone in life is going to understand you. Not everyone in life is going to treat you how you want to be treated. And not everyone in life is... And I just like, once you accept that, I feel like you stop acting like a victim and then move right along. I wasn't going to take it and like it's not going to wear me down. That they weren't opening the door for me, and they were opening it for these random Israeli backpackers, and like, why, and it was like hurtful in the moment, and it forced me to stop and think about like, why are they doing that? I'm like, he's not here for me, and he doesn't really speak my language, and it's difficult for him to talk to me. And, maybe he's having a rough day, but he has to put on a face for these Israelis. And, they're here to have a kosher meal, and that's the most important thing. And I'm going to have kosher regardless. Like, it could be a bunch of things. Yeah. And maybe as Shluchim, like, we should hold ourselves to a higher standard of like, we should understand where they're coming from more than other people.
Yeah. And we do, without even trying.
Yeah. Shared trauma.
Yeah. Wow. This was so amazing. I'm so happy you came. So happy we did this.
Yeah, this was fun.
Great. Do you want to tell people where to find you?
I mean, like, you can try to find me, but if I don't know you, I don't need random people following me on Instagram. And I feel like once you meet somebody, then you can follow me, So if you want to follow me on Instagram, just
have
to meet me once. Yeah, that's really it.
But amazing.
Or just like find me on Kingston. I'm usually in Essen Bench at 2 a.m. That's really, if you want to have this conversation, find me in Essen Bench. It's my favorite place.
Honestly, that's probably the best place for this to happen.
2 in the morning. 2 in the morning in Essen Bench.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So that's where you'll find us next.
Yeah, I think that's so appropriate.
So stay fabulous. And
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.